Hello everyone, today is 24th of June, now it's 10:30 in the morning Moscow time. I'm Leopard and this is my first update for the day in which I will share all the main news that are making headlines in Russian media outlets and Russian language pages on different internet platforms. There are quite a few very significant developments and news that I'd like to share with you for this moment, and I will start with the horrific terrorist attack on Sevastopol that happened yesterday, when Kyiv regime, with the assistance of Pentagon, launched 5 ATACMS long-range missiles towards the city. 4 missiles were intercepted by Russian air defense systems, but unfortunately 1 missile with the cluster munition warhead exploded over the coastline, over the beach in Sevastopol, which is of course Crimean Peninsula. And as a result of explosions of the cluster munitions, 4 civilians were killed, including 2 children. 151 civilians were wounded. This is latest information on this terrorist attack. Among wounded civilians, up to 30 are children. More than 60 civilians were hospitalized, and this morning I read information that medics are considering to transport about 20 civilians that are in heavy conditions to Moscow's best medical facilities. No final decision yet been made on that, or no information on this for this moment. So horrific terrorist attack. Of course, significant part of public, I would say, everybody is very angry on this. Many people are demanding revenge, understandably so. And according to reports this morning, there was a Russian missile strike in Odessa. I translated this information, so I'll give you more precise information. So Russian troops launched missile strike. This happened this morning in the area of heavy crane manufacturing plant in Odessa, where there was a warehouse with Western-made missiles and foreign mercenaries. This was reported by RIA Novosti, and sources Sergei Lebedev, coordinator of the Nikolaev underground, or Russian partisans in Nikolaev region, that are of course connected with their other partisan groups also all around Kyiv controlled territory. So possibly retaliatory strike did take place from Russian side, and this area of concentration of foreign mercenaries, NATO troops, I will say, and the warehouse with the Western missiles were destroyed. I shared on my Telegram this video. This is from this morning, by the way. I mean, huge cloud of smoke. Something is definitely is burning there heavily, and of course there is no way to know what exactly was targeted, how successfully, but yet again, according to Russian underground, it was a warehouse with Western mercenaries and missiles. Unfortunately, significant part of Western media outlets ignore this terrorist attack on Sevastopol, which is expected. Western media outlets are propaganda tools of the Western ruling class, and of course they will try to minimize any wrongdoing of their Western militaries, Western elites. But people definitely here in Russia are angry, demanding revenge, and on internet, in comment sections, you will see many comments with demands to at least shut down Black Sea for the NATO planes, NATO drones that are always circulating over the Black Sea when these long-range missile strikes are taking place. Long-range missile strikes, drone strikes, and so on. And that was the case yesterday. Also, according to Flight Radar website, during this terrorist attack on Sevastopol, that was conducted by Kyiv regime and the Pentagon. US RQ-4B Global Hawk drone was circulating over the Black Sea and most likely was providing real-time assistance to US militaries on the ground in Ukraine to conduct these missile launches. And by the way, it's not just public here in Russia that directly blames Washington for this terrorist attack. Russian Defense Ministry has a similar take. Let me translate this information also. So Washington is responsible for the missile attack on civilians in Sevastopol, since all flight missions for American ATACMS missiles are entered by US specialists. This was stated by Russian Ministry of Defense. So Russian MOD is blaming Pentagon directly. So it's not just public, and this makes even more understandable anger of the people here that no actions have been taken to neutralize these drones, aerial assets of the NATO that are constantly circulating over the Black Sea whenever these terrorist attacks with long-range weapon systems are conducted against Russia. Yet again, most likely today's attack in Odessa direction from Russian forces was a retaliatory strike. During the day, probably we will learn some more. What exactly was targeted? If it was a warehouse with Western missiles and a point of concentration of Western military personnel, then probably we will receive some additional information about casualties among Western military personnel, and of course all the additional news I will share whenever it will become available. I will share on my Telegram channel and next updates. But unfortunately, these terrorist attacks did not end on Sevastopol. Later on yesterday, terrorist groups conducted their attacks on synagogues and Orthodox churches in Dagestan, in the Dagestan region of the Russian Federation, Dagestan Autonomous Republic. Latest information is on these attacks that 15 police officers and multiple civilians, including priests, have been killed by terrorists in the Dagestan regions. 6 terrorists were neutralized, at least by law enforcement officers. And if there were more terrorists, I'm quite sure search operation is underway and they will be neutralized. Also, and by the way, my take straight away was on these developments in Dagestan, these tragic developments in Dagestan, that this is a CIA's and MI6's attempt to divert world community's attention from this horrific terrorist attack on Sevastopol that was conducted by Kyiv regime and the Pentagon. Some may agree with me, some may don't, but I don't think this is a coincidence that exactly in a day when this terrorist attack happened in Sevastopol, these terrorists have been activated in Dagestan. Probably we will learn some more on who was behind behind these terrorist attacks in Dagestan in upcoming days, and I would not be surprised at all to hear that it was Western secret services. So Russia is under heavy assault, by the way, heavy assault of the terrorists that are in charge of Western world. Western ruling class are terrorists. Western political elites are terrorists and mass murderers, and Russia is under assault and have to defend itself by any means necessary. It's just too obvious, and there is no way around it. And by the way, this information is also confirms my take on the situation. Rafael Grossi, head of IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency, commented on increasing strikes on Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant from Kyiv regime, and he stated that targeting Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is unacceptable. Unfortunately, as always, he did not mention that it's a Kyiv regime that is conducting this terrorist attacks on ZNPP. But we know that, and all informed people worldwide knows that Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is controlled by Russia. And therefore, if anyone is attacking this power plant, is Kiev regime and the Western backers of the Kiev regime, because there is no way Zelensky and his criminal associates will dare to attack Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant without authorization or maybe even order from their Western masters. And this is nuclear terrorism, by the way, on part of Kiev regime and their Western ruling class. This is clearly nuclear terrorism. And as I just mentioned in previous few weeks, there was an increase in attacks on Energodar city and Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. If we take a look at the map, then we will see that Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is located in the vicinity of Energodar city. This is city itself, by the way, some apartment, residential areas, industrial area, and of course Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant on the bank of Kakhovka water reservoir. And yesterday media outlets reported that as a result of previous strikes, Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant lost one of their lines of energo supplies. And even though Russian engineers restore power lines in relatively short time, of course it was creating additional risks of nuclear disaster. Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant obviously has its own power generators in case of emergency. If a power station is completely cut off from any supplies of electricity, which is crucial for cooling system, for many other vital parts of vital infrastructure of Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. But still, strikes on these power lines, strikes on Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is only can be designated as terrorist, nuclear terrorism, and nuclear blackmail from the Kiev regime and the Western ruling class. It's good that Rafael Grossi at least acknowledge that Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is under attacks, and world community knows who is behind these attacks. Even though, for whatever reason, Rafael Grossi never mentions that it's Kiev regime that conducts these attacks on ZNPP. Maybe because he's asset of CIA. Maybe. Last news agencies report that, according to Russian Defense Ministry, yet another Leopard, German-made Leopard tank was destroyed on the line of contact. In this particular case, in a rare, not exactly on a zero line, but some 18 kilometers deep inside Kiev-controlled territory. And there is nothing of their special news in destruction of the Leopard tank itself, but it is interesting to know that Russian forces destroyed this Leopard tank with FPV drones. This tank was located with FPV drones in some tree lines. It was hidden, and then it was destroyed by FPV drones also, which clearly indicates significant improvement in FPV drone warfare or drone warfare in general, because earlier FPV drones usually were used in 5-10 kilometer radius, and relatively long range strikes like 15, 20, 30 kilometers were conducted by Russian forces with Lancet drones, but seems like Russian armed forces have now some new generation of their FPV drones that can stay in air long enough to fly quite long distances, like 18, 20, who knows, maybe 25 and 30 kilometers away from the line of contact. So interesting development in this regard. And of course, drones in general play a unique role in this military conflict that have never been seen before, that's for sure. And the warfare in general is being changed by drones, that's for sure. Взгляд News paper is reporting about, in my understanding, attempt of the Western ruling class to create some division between Belgrade and Moscow, because there was an article in Financial Times, and many independent channels pointed out this article, paid attention to this article, that since 2022, according to Financial Times, Belgrade sell to US and some other Western countries weapons and munition for 800 million euros, and eventually these weapons and munition end up in Ukraine in hands of Kyiv regime. Well, I guess speculations on this topic will continue for time being, and maybe it's better Belgrade to come out and make an official statement. At least for now, I did not see any reaction from Belgrade, but it will definitely be good to say what really has happened with in regards to this topic. Did Serbia really sell to US or some other NATO member states weapons or munition for 800 million without precondition that these weapons would not be transferred to third parties without Belgrade's permission? Because usually there is always precondition in contracts that weapons or munition cannot be transferred to third party without permission of their country of origin. Of course, if US really brought some weapons from Serbia, they would not care about any contracts. They will transfer weapons to Kyiv regime anyways, and in that case, the question is why? Why would Belgrade, jeopardize centuries-old brotherly relationships with Russia for some peanuts, like 800 million euro or whatever the sum can be? Relationships between the countries are much more important, obviously, but yet again, in my personal opinion, this is all attempt of the Western ruling class and Financial Times. In this case, Financial Times was used for this to create some tensions between Belgrade and Moscow, and I would like to believe that this information is fake news. Hopefully, it is. At least. No one is reporting that Belgrade directly transferred weapons and munition to Kyiv regime. That would be really something that will possibly influence relationships between Moscow and Belgrade. But this particular news about involvement of some third countries and then so on, it will not influence relationships between Russia and Belgrade in a dramatic way. But anyways, probably it will be better if Belgrade will explain the situation for the public. RBK news agency is reporting that according to head of foreign ministry of the Poland, Radoslaw Sikorski, Warsaw is considering to shut down border completely with Belarus, all the border crossing, including Kukuriki, Kozlovici, and Terespol-Brest. First is for transit of goods. Second is for passengers. Unfortunate development, of course, if Warsaw will shut down border with Belarus, but I don't think many people will be surprised in if situation will develop this way. Just recently, several high-ranking officials in Belarus made statements that certain forces in the West, in the collective West, are planning some provocations on the western borders of the Belarus, and who knows, maybe this information is connected with some possible provocations that might take place on the border with Belarus. Only time will tell, but information itself is of course unfortunate because this will disrupt trade between the countries. It will make additional difficulties for ordinary citizens, which is never a good idea. It will create additional difficulties for businesses of Belarus and Poland or other European states. So nothing good about it, but yet again, nobody can say any good about leadership of Poland. I mean, they are sick individuals, crazy Russophobes, and enemies of the Poland itself, first of all, and Polish people, in my personal opinion. So you should expect anything from those crazies. TASS news agencies report that former and possibly future president of US, Donald Trump, during the rally speech in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania state, spoke about many topics, of course, and also mentioned Ukraine. And he said that if he is re-elected, then before his inauguration, he will resolve a Ukrainian conflict, which is a quite bolder and ambitious statement to make. After all, elections are in November this year, and inauguration supposed to take place on 20th of January next year. So it's going to be 2 months in between. And how Donald Trump or his team plans to resolve Ukrainian conflict, I would like to know details about it, because it's easy to say something like that, but to really achieve a breakthrough in this regards, that's going to be quite hard stuff to do. It is possible, though, if Trump is re-elected and if he will block financial and weapons supplies to money and weapons supplies to Kyiv regime, then, as Russian high-ranking officials stated many times, it will only take like a couple of weeks, maybe months or two exactly, and this conflict will end. And Kyiv regime will receive from Russian side a proposal that they would not be able to refuse. And that proposal will be, of course, unconditional surrender, and the conflict will end on that. So theoretically, Trump definitely can resolve this military conflict by blocking money and weapon supply to Kyiv regime, but of course he is not going to do so. During the election campaign, Trump and the other candidates might say whatever they like, but once they are in office, who knows what kind of policies they will pursue. Anyways, it is interesting to know that topic of Ukrainian conflict is one of their main ones for Trump and his team. Otherwise, I don't think he will mention this during their campaign rally. And probably, by the way, this information can be seen as a sort of indicator that number of citizens of US that are more and more informed about all this Ukrainian story is increasing, and more and more citizens of US are opposing policies of the Biden in regards to further prolongation of this conflict in Ukraine. And maybe Trump wants, by making these statements, wants to gain support of these citizens. Possible. Anyways, let's see. I mean, time will tell. And also, by the way, many of you probably know already that Nigel Farage, British politician, is in hot water, and he's being criticized almost by everybody among this Russophobe army in UK and outside of UK. And the reason is that during his interview with the BBC, he said that Russia was basically provoked by collective West, by with the NATO, constant NATO enlargement, EU enlargement, with the coup d'etat in 2014, and basically this is all true, by the way, all true. But these Russophobes in the collective West, they cannot have it. They cannot have it, man. And they went, they melt down. They went into the full scale meltdown, and they are calling names to Nigel Farage. You can imagine what kind of names: Putin's asset, Kremlin's asset, Russian agent. I mean, classic, by the way. If you are disagree with the Western ruling class and the policies of the Western ruling class, names that you're gonna be called. And that's exactly what's happening with Nigel Farage when he says basically nothing extraordinary. Let's go through this news. Western powers essentially guided Russia into launching a military operation against Ukraine by refusing to abandon plans for NATO and EU enlargement. Nigel Farage, leader of the Reform UK party, has stated in an interview with the BBC on Saturday. Farage, known for its prominent role in the Brexit campaign and his anti-immigration views, recalled that he warned of a potential war in Ukraine as early as 2014, following the Western-backed coup in Kiev. That's all he says, man. It was obvious, then quote, but it was obvious to me that the ever eastward expansion of NATO and the European Union was giving this man, he meant Russian President Vladimir Putin, a reason to say they are coming after us again and go to war, he stated. And while Farage claimed it was Putin's fault that Russia sent troops into Ukraine, he insisted that, and then quote, we provoked this war. So, still, by the way, he's unfortunately, this is also kind of trend in the West, and many of you, I guess, noticed it, that whenever politicians or public figures or media personalities, even among independent media or alternative media, some of them, not all of them obviously, but some of them usually, whenever they are critical of Western policies or policies of the Western ruling class in regards to Russia and this constant enlargement of NATO, despite warnings from Russia, not just for a year or two, but for decades, whenever they are critical of these policies, they always, for whatever reason, seems like they feel obligated to simultaneously criticize Russia and play in the hands of this Russophobic gang in the West by saying that still, I mean, yes, we provoked them with these policies, but Putin is, is evil, Russia is evil, all Russians are evil, they are guilty of this and that. And but why they are doing this? Why they feel they are obligated to play in the hands of these Russophobes by demonizing us? Why? Because if you are acknowledging the fact that Russia was provoked, then there is no but after that. Russia was provoked and Russia reacted. So if you want to blame someone, then blame whoever started this. That seems logical to me, but for whatever reason, in this particular case, Farage went after us. In other cases, some other public figures, media personalities, they always, unfortunately, many of them, whenever they are little critical of the Western ruling class and their policies, they always have to go after us, man. As if they are afraid of this mob, this Russophobic mob, by the way, in the West, and their attacks, so that they trying to kind of balance their statements, not to anger these Russophobes in extreme ways, which is really unfortunate. I mean, if you are, how should I say, tough enough or brave enough to start saying the truth, then say it as it is, all the way, by the way. And don't be scared and don't play in the hands of these Russophobes, man. Otherwise, it loses their importance. This first step of yours, when you are saying the truth that yes, Russia was provoked, it loses its power. If you then start demonizing Russia again, I mean, what the hell? Whoever provoked is guilty, not one that was provoked and reacted on the provocation, in my personal opinion. But anyways, it is interesting to notice that a few days ago, Donald Trump said that NATO enlargement played a role in provocation of this conflict, and this conflict was provoked basically. Now Nigel Farage is saying the same. I wonder which other public figure in the West will be brave enough to at least start talking about responsibility that is on the Western ruling class for what has happened in Ukraine. and for destroying relationships between West and Russia. Anyways, let's continue. How long is this update? 29 minutes. Okay, I will go through at least headlines. So TASS news agency is reporting that Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu, stated that military operation against Hamas is closing to its final stage. And according to some Israeli media, Netanyahu also said that next is Hezbollah. For him, next target is Hezbollah, and well, if that's the case, if Netanyahu, if IDF conducts a full-scale offensive on Hezbollah, then risk that region will end up in a war. Entire region will end up in a war. Will increase significantly, of course. And as I said many times in previous updates, if Netanyahu's government will authorize full-scale conflict with Hezbollah, that will most likely mean that they have agreement with Washington, with some other NATO member states, and they are expecting military support and assistance from NATO countries. First of all, from US, UK. Otherwise, I don't think Netanyahu will dare to provoke full-scale conflict with Hezbollah, because Hezbollah is incomparably stronger political and military force than that Hamas ever was. You cannot compare. This is, I mean, very different stories. Hezbollah is force to be reckoned with by all countries in the region. It's a serious force, and military experts almost in unison are saying the same. So if IDF will still attack Hezbollah, probably that means that NATO will get involved in this war. Let's hope it will not happen, but you know. TASS news agencies report that according to statements from Houthi rebels or Ansar Allah movement in Yemen, they conducted strikes on 2 commercial vessels in Red Sea and Indian Ocean. No details. About crew of these vessels, if anyone was wounded or killed as a result of these attacks, and how precise strikes themselves were. But once again, Houthi rebels are demonstrating their capabilities to continue this blockade, basically, that they impose in Israel by prohibiting Israeli-linked or US and UK-linked or EU-linked vessels to pass through the Red Sea or to navigate through, not far away from Yemeni coast. RBK news agency is reporting that US aircraft carrier Dwight Eisenhower is no longer in the Red Sea. So it's in Southeast Mediterranean then, one may assume. And according to reports, another striking group on the flagship of Theodore Roosevelt aircraft carrier will replace Dwight Eisenhower striking group. And it is theoretically possible that both these striking groups are now in Mediterranean. If we take a look at the map, so this is Red Sea, and if Dwight Eisenhower left Red Sea, most likely it went to Mediterranean, and it's not far away from Israel right now. So theoretically, it can participate in military operations against Hezbollah if agreement is in place between Netanyahu's government and Biden's administration. And possibly this another aircraft carrier, Theodore Roosevelt, isn't it? Striking group is also in somewhere in Mediterranean. Information said that this group should replace Dwight Eisenhower, but at some point they will cross. Both these striking groups will be in Mediterranean, and both can take place in possible Israeli assault on Hezbollah. So this is, my reading of the big picture. I'm not saying that this is exactly what is going on, that both aircraft carrier groups are in the southeast Mediterranean right now and are ready to participate in possible assault on Hezbollah. But I think it's a possibility. It's a possibility. But first of all, let's hope there will be no full-scale war between Israel and Lebanon. Let's hope so. Also, by the way, interesting news that according to RT, jailed US spy issues a desperate appeal to Washington. So Paul Whelan, an American arrested on espionage charges in Moscow nearly 6 years ago, has called for the US government to take whatever steps are necessary, such as incarcerating Russian citizens at Guantanamo Bay to secure his release from prison. Speaking on Friday in a telephone interview with CNN, unbelievable, isn't it? This person, this US spy, has phone and calling left and right and giving interviews. What the hell is going on here? I don't know. But speaking on Friday in a telephone interview with the CNN, Whelan suggested that the administration of the US President Joe Biden has not worked aggressively enough to free both him and the Wall Street Journal correspondent Evan Gershkovich, also accused, by the way, of espionage charges, who has been brought to trial on similar charges. Yes, Whelan was convicted of espionage and sentenced in 2020 to 16 years in prison. And then, quote, there should be decisive actions taken, their 54-year-old Whelan stated in this interview. And then, quote, the US needs to go out and do something. Fill up Guantanamo Bay with Russian officials, arrest Russian spies, do something that makes the Kremlin sit up and take notice and say, okay, yeah, right, now it's time that we are gonna get even and pull back, and then we want back what you've got of ours, and we'll call it a day. I mean, wow. This person is calling Russian officials, Russian citizens, to be incarcerated. Spies, okay, spies, I mean, counterintelligence service always are fighting on the spies. They know risks, but officials and just ordinary citizens, what they have to do with this whole situation? And how this person end up calling CNN? I mean, maybe he got permission. I don't know, but strange. And it's I checked, by the way. I checked, and yes, on CNN, that's the interview here. This is CNN page, so it's on the headline, Paul Whelan urges Biden administration to take decisive actions to secure his release as he surpasses 2,000 days in Russian custody. So yes, there is an article on CNN with his interview. So, well, I don't think Russia will be against to exchange these two persons, these two CIA spies on possible Russian spies that maybe are holding US custody. I don't know about that, but there can be some agreement reached between Moscow and Washington, but I'm not quite sure that Biden's administration cares about these people. So therefore, you know, hard to tell what is going to happen. But I believe, based on for example, interviews or comments that Putin gave about Gershkovich, I believe Moscow has, I mean, no issue to exchange these assets, these CIA assets, on some Russian citizens that have been detained in the US. It's up to Washington, I guess, to work on this matter. But yet again, Biden's administration did not care, I guess. They were very active to release this basketball player, this female that was arrested not for spying, but because she brought with her some drug stuff in Russia. While perfectly well known that it's illegal, by the way. Russia is not California, where you can use drugs on the streets, in the daytime, and it's okay there. In Russia, it's not okay. And she still brings some drugs with her, and she was arrested. Understandably so. And Biden's administration was very active to release her. Okay. Good, by the way. Good. She learned her lesson. She went to US, and good luck to her. No issues there. But why Washington is so reluctant to release its spies, man? Its spies. Its assets that are, probably have some meaning for, or supposed to have some meaning for US as a state. Because they worked for the state and they risked for the states. But anyways, with Biden's administration, you never know, man. Those people are crazy. So they don't care about anybody, I guess. Any US citizen. Artists report here that Germany blames Moscow for worsening ties with Beijing. That's something interesting also. The strong ties between Russia and China have led to deterioration in Beijing's trade relations with EU member states. German Vice Chancellor Robert Habeck told the journalists on Saturday during the 3-day visit to China. The EU and its Western allies, and by the way, when it comes to Habeck, I read some articles that Chinese Prime Minister refused to meet with Habeck, ignore his request for a meeting, understandably so. Who the hell is Habeck, man? Let's be real, man. I don't know. Some loosely relevant individual in Germany itself. So why would Chinese Prime Minister spend time by talking to someone that don't really represents German people? I don't know. All Habeck represents is CIA. So if China wants to have some negotiations with some talks with CIA, they can talk with them directly, I guess. They will have some means of communication. But anyways, the EU and its Western allies have, and I say CIA not for nothing, by the way. Habeck is from Green Party, isn't it? If I'm not mistaken, he is from Green Party, like Baerbock, foreign minister of Germany, and Green Party is asset of the CIA, isn't it? German Green Party was created and led by CIA, and it's the CIA that put Green Party in current position in Germany. And in many other European states, by the way, these green movements also are products of the CIA. But anyways, let's continue. The EU and its Western allies have rebuked the Chinese government for maintaining close diplomatic ties and economic ties with Moscow, aimed the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, as well as its reluctance to join in the international criticism of the Kremlin. Beijing's support for Moscow is damaging the trade and economic ties between China and the bloc. Habeck, who also serves as Germany's economy and climate minister, said. He added that Beijing can't just switch to a neutral position and then take sides against the security interests of their other country. During the meeting with the Chinese counterpart Sheng Ji on Saturday, the vice chancellor stated, so he had a meeting with the deputy of the Chinese prime minister, something like that. The vice chancellor stated that the German and EU security interests are directly affected by the conflict, warning Beijing of potential economic consequences due to its cooperation with Moscow. So, in one hand, Habeck is complaining that trade relationships are deteriorating with China and wow, what we should do. In other hand, he is threatening China that if you maintain close ties with Russia, then these trade relationships will deteriorate even further. And it's you that are complaining, for God's sake. For China, Russia is much more important than entire EU altogether. But yet again, Hebek, man, I don't know, did he even finish school? I'm not quite sure about it. It's clearly some primitive individual that have no idea what the hell is going on in this world, man. And that's all, really. Unbelievable. But yes, I don't think Europe is in position to blackmail China, by the way. I mean, let's be real here. EU's top economies are on a verge of recession due to destruction of their trade relationships and economical ties with Russia. And if EU officials or officials of the EU member states will start now trade war with China, I mean, EU economies are finished, by the way. They're not going to survive that. As simple as that. And that's why I'm saying EU is no position to threaten China, man. Come on. RTs report that American envoy follows Putin to Vietnam. So senior US envoy has traveled to Vietnam for diplomatic talks just days after Russian President Vladimir Putin made a state visit to their Southeast Asian country. Okay, understandable. They panicked. They panicked in Washington and sent the envoy. But yet again, Vietnamese government is playing interesting policies. They want to keep some working relationships with US, but same time they know history. Vietnamese, they know history perfectly well, and they understand geopolitical tensions. And that's why recent visit of Russian president was extremely important, because I believe Russian delegation behind the closed doors probably try to be mediator between Hanoi and Beijing to deal with some tensions between these two countries, because it's not good. Any tensions in this emerging multipolar world, in global south in this particular case, is no good for this world. And therefore, of course, if Moscow can play role of mediator and bring sides closer, it's good. Russia will do this, and therefore, I mean, no matter who Washington gonna send to Vietnam, Hanoi will never escalate with US, obviously, but same time, I think after this visit of Putin, leadership of Vietnam will start, maybe not necessarily tomorrow, but will start looking for ways, together with Chinese colleagues, to achieve some compromises in territorial disputes in some areas, some other areas that sides have some different approaches. So yes, Western ruling class is panicking, by the way. They really are panicking, and I guess Washington will need to send another envoy to Cambodia, because the first time in history of the relationships between the countries, Russian and Cambodian militaries sign up an agreement on cooperation. First time in history, and this is big, by the way, because if you take a look at the map, Vietnam is, of course, a strategical country, extremely important country. Just take a look at the area, by the way. This is a main trade route right now for world, this area, South China Sea, and Vietnam is, of course, one of the major countries in this region. And this is Cambodia, right next to Vietnam, also crucial country in this region. And if Russian and Cambodian militaries are managing to achieve some agreements, then I guess on political level the relationships are even better. And therefore, well, I mean, I expect US to send another envoy now to Cambodia, or maybe same one that was directed to Vietnam. Anyways, let's continue. TASS news agencies report that EU, according to Nikkei newspaper, this is Japanese newspaper, I believe, EU wants to achieve agreement with Tokyo and Seoul, with Japan and South Korea on military partnership, and EU is in hurry now, especially after agreement between Russia and North Korea about strategical partnership, including in military field. But yet again, when it comes to Japan, Japan is occupied country, and we all know this. I don't think Japanese political class has enough strength or independence from Washington, or are brave enough to pursue national interests of the Japan, and therefore start looking for ways to improve relationships with Russia and with China. And therefore Japan will most likely continue this ladder of escalation, constant escalation with the under orders of the Washington or Western ruling class towards Russia and China. But South Korea, by the way, South Korea, in my opinion, has little more independence, and they should choose wisely their friends and their enemies. I will say that, because I don't think Seoul wants to be enemy of Moscow or Beijing, or Pyongyang for that matter, because one day, of course, Korea's, North and South Korea, should be united under confederacy or under whatever construction, legal construction, but people are divided, and they should be reunited. And to achieve this, of course, Seoul needs to maintain at least working relationships with Pyongyang, and good relationships with Beijing and Moscow. It's just it is what it is. So let's see if EU will be successful by dragging these two countries, Japan and South Korea, into some military alliances that they are creating in the global south, UKOS, for example, or AUKUS, or in some other military partnerships with the collective West. Let's see. TASS News Agency is reporting that today, by the way, European Union will announce first transaction of the 1.4 billion euros from profits of the frozen Russian assets to Kiev regime. So let's see if this was reported by Politico originally. And if it's true, by the way, then I guess today will go down in history as a day when beginning of the end of the Western financial and banking system have started. Because this is a stealing, world is watching, and once this 1.4 billion or whatever sum will be transferred to Ukraine from profits of the Russian assets, which is Russian money, by the way. Profits of Russian assets are Russian profits. So if you start stealing these assets today, then yes, we can say that it's the beginning of the end of banking and the financial system of the Western world. Many Western institutions, by the way, financial institutions, warned politicians in the West not to conduct such a step, not to steal Russian assets. But, well, no one listened to those institutions or those experts. Even European Central Bank, by the way, was warning Brussels not to steal Russian assets. But they ignore even their own central bank. So, I mean, they are sick individuals, man. Thieves. Dirty thieves, man. That's all when it comes to Western political elites and the ruling class. And I will end this update on this news that subsidiary of the Bank of China, one of the biggest banks in China's People's Republic, made decision to stop cooperating with the Russian banks that are under sanctions to avoid possible secondary sanctions from their from the US and the EU. Okay, unfortunate, but nothing new. First and second tier financial institutions, not just in China but in many other countries, are afraid of these secondary sanctions and therefore minimizing contacts with the Russian businesses, but they are third and fourth tier financial institutions that are providing same services, and they don't really care about Western sanctions, because those financial institutions, once they are under sanctions, another one can be created in about like day or two. Once that another one is under sanctions, then third one may be created. So there is always the way to bypass these Western sanctions. And after all, of course, BRICS member states are working for alternative financial and banking system for this world, alternative to the Western one, and hopefully we will see this system being operational as you know, in upcoming years. And before that, well, sides have to deal with these artificial barriers that Western ruling class is creating by weaponizing their Western financial and banking system. And there's no way around it. But you know, businesses will find a way. They always do. So it's only a matter of time, and once this alternative financial and banking system is created by BRICS, that's gonna be it. By the way, Western ruling class will no longer have this weapon in their hands when they are threatening just about everybody worldwide with the sanctions. Okay, this is it for now. Hopefully you will find this update interesting, informative, and useful. And if so, please click that like button and leave some commentary just about anything, any topic. This is the only way we can influence YouTube's algorithm to reach wide audience. And for very same reason, if you can, please share information about my channel with your friends in real life and on the internet, on platforms that you are actively using. And finally, if you like my work, if you like my channels, please consider to support with small donations through PayPal, Boosty, or by subscribing to my Patreon page. All the links are under this video in the description box and the pinned comment. This is it for now. Have a great day and take care.